Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Amma ba'd, we continue from page 23. al-qawaid al-thalitha, ahkam al-wasaili ka ahkam al-maqasid. Wa ma la yatimmu al-wajbu illa bihi fa huwa wajib. Maxim number 3, the rulings on the means are like the rulings on the ends. Whatever is necessary to complete an obligation is itself an obligation. The second part is an example of the first part. So, ahkam al-wasail ka ahkam al-maqasid. What you're trying to achieve, that which takes you to that act, has the same ruling as the ending. If the ending is an obligation, like salah, then that which takes you to fulfill that obligation is an obligation. If something is haram, like zina, that which leads you to that haram is also going to be haram. So this is very important because we have a lot of people that they'll tell you, Akhi, this is not specified in the Sharia that it's haram or that it's an obligation, etc. This is not specified that it's makruh. This is not specified that it's mustahab. It's not specified. We told them not every detail, minute or major, needs to come in the Sharia. The Sharia comes with general rules and guidelines, and that which is applied on those rules and guidelines becomes part of the Sharia itself. Even if it's not specified in a specific ayah or a specific hadith. And you have common rules like this one, called, for example, sadd al-dhara'i'. Sadd al-dhara'i' are stopping that which is harmful. Sadd al-dhara'i' is stopping that which is harmful. So when you have, for example, zina being haram, we know that when zina is haram, what else is haram? What leads to that haram? Like touching a woman. Okay, see, you saying driving towards the area. A lot of people ask, let's say it's a very hot day. Okay, it's a very hot day, and they say, I mean, wallah, it's a hot day, let's just go to the beach. I just want to go for a swim. Fiya shi, is anything Quran and Sunnah that says it's haram to swim? But yeah, it's mustahab to go for a swim. We say, yeah, Rajul, but you're going to go and there's going to be XYZ there. That XYZ, and I know you know what XYZ is, that XYZ is going to be a means for you to be led to haram. So anything that leads to the haram is also haram. So that could make you going to the beach on that particular day haram. Allah at the end.
Yeah. Because in the Quran it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that
that's right, it's a means. It's a means onto it. Okay, so sadd al-dhara'i'. So anything that is a means to haram becomes haram. And this is very important as a rule to Sharia. And anything that is an obligation, it's an obligation for you to fulfill that obligation. And a common example is, for example, work. Jumu'ah is an obligation for you to go to, yes or no? It's an obligation. That if a person is going to start a job, and he knows 100%, if I take this job, they're not going to let me go for Jumu'ah. He knows that 100%. Then what happens to that job? Is it halal for him to take or haram? It becomes haram for him to take that job. It's different when it's an exception to the rule. Okay, remember, it's different when it's an exception to the rule, because these are general principles, specific cases are different. If a person is working and one day he gets stuck at work where he can't go, it doesn't mean his whole job is haram. But we're talking about from the beginning. You told your boss, look, on Fridays, I need to take off so I can go to Jumu'ah. And he says, look, mate, I apologize, but in this particular position, there is no way we're going to let you work on go on Fridays to your Friday prayers. And you know it's an obligation on you, then you having to leave that job is an obligation in order for you to fulfill the obligation of Jumu'ah. Okay, let's say a woman, she needs to work or she wants to work, which is generally the rule is like mubah, okay, but they told her in this particular job you have to wear a particular uniform, and that uniform means going to be very tight. Your hijab, maybe you can't wear it properly. She, in taking that job, is going to commit haram. So it's an obligation for her to make sure her hijab is proper, which means if she can't wear her hijab proper, it's an obligation for her to stay away from that job. So the ends, that which you're trying to achieve, whatever that ruling is, the means to it has the exact same ruling. Okay? If it's something mustahab, then it's also mustahab. Let's say you want to go to Umrah. So it's mustahab for you to try and save up money. It's mustahab, it's not an obligation, because Umrah is mustahab. It's mustahab for you, it's recommended for you to save up money for you to go to Umrah, etc., etc. This title, أحكام الوسائل كأحكام المقاصد, this is the general rule, and this specific example is just a way of the ulama when they speak to make things easier for you to understand. There's the general rule, then there's this specific rule that comes under that general. The Shaykh Rahimahullah says, meaning the means of legislative rules, that is their purpose, their processes and integral factors, are given the same rulings as the ends. Because whatever cannot be completed except by a particular factor, then that factor falls under its rulings by necessity, as it is equally required. Thus, if something is commanded, then whatever factor is required to complete it is also commanded. Whatever is necessary to complete an obligation is itself an obligation. Whatever is necessary to complete a recommended act is itself recommended. If something is prohibited, then every type of procedure, means and process which leads to that thing is prohibited likewise, whether it is prohibited or disliked. Let's say a person, he says, my phone, like he has a smartphone, an iPhone or a Samsung, and he says, my phone is always leading me to haram. I try my best to stay away from haram, but I can't help myself. I'm always falling into haram. Whether I'm looking at accounts on social media that I shouldn't look at, or I'm going on sites that I shouldn't go on, and I can't stop myself. And that person's right, it could be haram for him to have that phone. Now, let's say he says, I need a phone. So, الضرورات تقدر بقدرها. Remember, this is why أحكام الفقهية, they're always linked with each other. Go back two weeks ago when we spoke about الضرورات, your need. If you have a need, then it's linked only to your need. You need a phone that can only call and makes messages, for example. Not every case, talking about a specific case. You need a phone that only calls and makes messages. If having a phone is always leading you to haram, and it becomes an obligation for you to get rid of that phone, then you do the bare minimum that you need, which is calls and messages. If that's what you need, then that's what you need. To show you how they're all linked together. You having something leading to haram, you need to get rid of it. Let's say salah. A person, he went to work, and Allah Yahdi, he's wearing his little short tradie shorts, okay? And he needs to pray dhuhr. And he's on the job site. And he says, I don't have anything to cover my awrah to pray dhuhr. What's the obligation for him to do? Huh? How does he pray? I'm saying, let's say he's at a job site, and we said he's wearing his little short, tradie shorts. And he's showing his awrah.
He can pray.
Sure, he can pray. But we're just saying, you have to apply the rule. He's on the job site, and it's time to pray dhuhr.
He leaves.
What does he do?
Leaves, he gets.
It becomes an obligation for him to cover his awrah. How? If he needs to go buy, then he needs to go buy. If you have to go to Kmart and buy shorts, it's an obligation. You can't say, Wallah, khalas, I'm on the job site, I'll pray however I am. It doesn't work. You have to leave what you're doing in order to fulfill the commandment of covering your awrah. Again, Shabab, this is all important because all of it is linked. Okay? Like we said about the wudu, let's say the water, somehow, all of the water cuts off in your house. Okay? And you only have a little bit of water in your fridge to cook and drink. You know the water's not going to come on Sydney Water, send you a message, water's off until tomorrow morning. You need to pray Isha, you need to pray Fajr. What's an obligation upon you? Because you have to make wudu, sah? You have to pray, so you have to make wudu. So it becomes an obligation upon you to do what? To go and get water. Then if you can only go buy water, it becomes an obligation on you to go and buy that water if you can afford it. So anything that's an obligation, it's an obligation for you to fulfill that. That means you have to go and fulfill. And vice versa. If something is haram, then which leads to is also haram. Examples include the obligatory prayer, zakah, fasting, hajj, umrah, and jihad. Likewise, individual obligations of fulfilling obligatory rights, such as the rights of Allah, one's parents, relatives, spouses, leaders, etc. Whatever is necessary to complete these aforementioned things, it is itself obligatory, such as walking to the place of prayer, purifying oneself for its purpose, covering oneself appropriately for prayer, as well as all other conditions and endeavoring to carry them out. A person, it's his wife's right to live in a decent house, and equal to her people. Live in a decent house, to eat decent food, for his kids to be in a decent school, his kids to wear decent clothing, etc. But he says, Akhi, I don't want to work. I'm happy to sit on Centrelink, and whatever, she has to accept whatever we put in. Inshallah, put in a one bedroom studio, غصبا عن راسها, she has to stay in a one bedroom studio. And if I want to buy my kids, the worst of the worst, the least of the least, they should thank Allah Azza wa Jalla that they've got food on the table and clothes on their back. It's an obligation on you as a father and as a husband to provide what for your family, at least the standard if you're able to afford it. So if you're sitting at home by choice and because of that they're suffering, what happens? Do we say, khalas, yep, no problem, tick of approval? Or we say it's an obligation for you to go and work? It's an obligation for you if you're able to go and work in order to provide that standard. If you're able, different if a person's poor because he's got an injury, he can't work, this is a different story. But if a person is able and he's choosing not to, and because of that, his wife and his children are suffering, then it's an obligation for him to go to work. And if he's not fulfilling the obligation, then he's committing a what? Committing a sin. He's committing a sin, to show you how many people, unfortunately, they get a lot of things mixed up in the Sharia. He wants to, somebody thinks that he's smart, he's religious, he understands ABC of the religion. He tells you, no, they should be zuhad. They should be content with what I'm providing. If she knew the rights of a husband, if they knew the rights of the parent, the Sharia is just. The Sharia is just. It obliged on you to provide a particular standard to the best of your ability. If you're not providing it because of you and your decisions, then you could be sinful in that endeavor. Let's say a man gets divorced and he's put as a mut'akhar with his wife, $50,000. Okay, and they get divorced. And he says, I don't have money now. I don't have money to pay that debt off, which is on his neck. What's the obligation if you have debt on you? You owe someone money, what's the obligation? To pay that debt. If he's not working by choice, just because he wants to harm her, he says, I don't want to work, why? So he can say, I don't have any money. How can I pay? I don't have any money. What does that become? It becomes a sin. Why? Because the obligation is for him to pay off that debt. The obligation is for him to pay off that debt. And so when he's not paying it off by choice, it becomes sinful on him. Like, you have to go get a job, you have to go work so you can pay off that debt because it's an obligation for you to pay it off. Parents. Let's say there's a child and the parents actually need him. The parents need that child. Let's just give an example, financial. This young man, he wants to set up his life. His parents need that financial assistance from him. And they're not going to get it anywhere else except for that child. That child, it becomes now an obligation for him to look after his parents. To what extent? This is the question. To what extent does the child have to look after the parents? And when you answer, you have to answer based on al-qawaid fiqhiyyah. For the basic standard to be met. Let's say he tells you, if I give them that basic standard, I'm going to be harmed. I'm not going to be able to get married, I'm not going to be able to look after my family, or I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, etc. Dhafir, mashallah, very good son, tabarakallah. Oh, you said that? Mashallah, very good son. But he said you still have to do it, even if you're going to be harmed. It's wrong, but very good son, mashallah.
He shouldn't harm himself.
You shouldn't harm yourself. Based on what rule? الضرورة تقدر بقدرها, but they need more. So their darura is not met yet. Yeah, so what's the rule? We've only been through like 2 rules. So it shouldn't be that hard. We've only been through 2 rules. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. No harm done, no harm caused. So if in order for him to help his parents, he ends up harming himself, where his wife, for example, is not getting her rights, his children not getting her rights, or his work is being affected and he's going to lose his job, then does the Sharia tell you, khalas, fix one harm with another harm? And we said you don't do reciprocating harm. Okay? So he has to help his parents. He has to help his parents to the extent where he's not going to be harmed. Let's give a specific number. Let's say he makes $1,200 a week, and he needs $800. He needs $800 to live normal. So he's got 400 to play with. His dad says, I need 700 a week. All he has to give his dad is how much? 400. Why? Because he has to fulfill the right of his dad by assisting as much as he can. But all he can do before he gets harmed is 400. So the Sharia does not take one harm of a person and put it on another person. Jayyid? All of these things, they may seem confusing at the beginning, but the more you go through al-qawaid al-fiqhiyyah, the easier these things become to understand, and the easier it is for you to understand fatwa, how fatwa work. Jayyid? This is important because a lot of parents, sometimes, he actually says, I need that money of my son, even if he gets harmed. Anta wa maluka li abik. Says, you, as the Prophet said, you and your wealth are for your father. We say, apply it with the qawaid of the Sharia. La darar wa la dirar. If you need, then what about your son's needs? So you don't go harm your son in order for yourself. Okay, all of these are important.
Is it a sin if you do put the darar on yourself in order to help someone else?
Or you've oppressed your wife. You've oppressed your wife, you've oppressed your children. So now you're taking their rights away. If all of you agree, you know what? We'll do it extra tough so our parents can be happy. And you can agree on that, you're going to get immense ajr, inshallah. As long as you can handle it. As long as you can handle it. But if a person does it and he ends up oppressing, we get phone calls about this all the time. We get phone calls about this all the time where the family are harmed because, the husband needs to help his family. But he ends up helping his family to an extent where it's actually harming him. And it's usually not we need it to live, it's we need it because we want to live a certain lifestyle. But because the parents can't work anymore, they may be living off their children and the child doesn't want to upset his parents, so he keeps on giving. But who gets harmed at the end of the day? A lot of the time the wife and the children. So these types of incidents happen a lot. Let's say the father couldn't give, the father needed 600, the son could only give 400. And the dad said, if you don't give me 600, سأغضب عليك. I'm going to be angry with you. And I'm going to make dua for you. وما بسامحك, and I'll never forgive you. Is any of that counted? None of it is counted. Okay? None of it, take the 400 and move on. None of it is counted. Okay? Because it's not in his ability. And inshallah, in the next rule, we'll say a little bit more of that. As for the recommended acts, then examples include optional prayer, giving charity, fasting in supererogatory Hajj and Umrah, visiting the sick, attending a gathering of remembrance, etc. Whatever is necessary to complete those aforementioned things, it itself is recommended, such as walking to a particular place, etc. The same applies to prohibitions. This paragraph is important, okay, because this is where people try and be sneaky. The same applies to prohibitions such as shirk, associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in worship, murder, fornication, consuming alcohol, taking interest, etc. All processes which lead to these aforementioned matters are prohibited and forbidden. This also applies to every trick that is used to obtain interest in any other prohibited manner, as one is to observe the intention behind it and its eventual result, such as the matter of aina, which we'll explain, the prohibition of taking riba al-fadl, nikah, al-muhallil, etc. In the same way, the means to dislike matters are themselves disliked. Yani it's clear that which leads to haram is also haram. This is where something mubah can take the ruling of al-ghayat or al-ahkam. Tayyib. Selling, this is ASIO, Australian Federal Police, this is an example, relax. The general rule of selling weapons. Let's say you're in America and you're because we have to say America, okay? Let's say you're in America and you're allowed to sell guns to the public. So you have a gun shop which is legal, full paperwork, you pay your taxes and everything, okay? And you sell guns to the public. The ruling on that, what is it? Is it fard, mustahab, mubah, makruh, or haram? Mubah. It's allowed, okay? It's allowed. If someone comes to you and says, or even if he doesn't tell you, I want to buy a gun so I can go and kill this person. I want to go and commit murder. My ex-wife, she left me. I want to go kill her. My father scratched my car. I want to kill him. My son didn't get me a cup of coffee. I want to kill him. Whatever it is. And that's his intention. That thing which is mubah bil asal, by principle, by default, it's allowed, now becomes what? becomes haram. Because he's going to do a haram, so anything that leads to that haram, even if it's the original ruling that it's allowed, becomes haram. Okay, it becomes haram. This is very important. Going to the gym. I'll give you an example, day-to-day examples. Going to the gym. The asal, okay, the original ruling, is it allowed or not allowed? The original ruling. Allowed. The guy says, I want to get, his intention, he's not going to say it. His intention, I'm going to the gym so I can check out the women. Him going to the gym becomes haram. Okay, him going to the gym becomes haram. This is very important because the rulings can always change. And all of it depends on your intention. Okay, it depends on your intention when it comes to the halal. That goes back to which rule? Because now, again, they're all linked. This goes back to which rule? Again, we've only been through two. Al-umur bi-maqasidiha and la darar wa la dirar. Al-umur bi-maqasidiha. The matters about what you intend. You intended haram with it, it becomes haram. Tayyib, here, the wasa'il now are the actual actions. You selling that gun to that person, again in America where it's all legal, bil asl, it's allowed. But you know he's going to do haram with it, so the hukum of that halal has now become haram. And for you to assist that person in the haram for you is haram. This is very important. All these little things make a big difference in a person's life. Because we always hear it from the juhal. Oh, but it's halal. How can you make it haram? It's the sharia that made it haram if there's a haram end to that particular halal. So anything that is, anything that leads to haram is itself haram. Type some of the tricks that people apply. The Sheikh mentioned 3 examples here. Al-aina. What's al-aina? Bayu al-aina. Something not ain, not aina.
Selling something at a different price. Make it equal.
Isn't that what it says in the footnote?
What is that in the footnote? Explain that. Explain what the footnote is. This is what I love when people say, "Khalas, you just read books and become a scholar." Okay, read the book and let me know what it means. Give me an example. Give me an example of bay al-aina. What's the point of bay al-aina? The point of al-aina is riba, but undercover riba. So they've done riba, but they didn't do riba yani, openly. Example. You want to give me an example, Abdurrahman? Better be a good one. Yalla, tafadal.
You buy a laptop from someone for 1,000 and you sell it back to you for 1,200. The same thing, I think, or a cow. Something that hasn't changed.
You're right, but you need to expand on it because you still didn't explain how it's riba. That's a clear transaction. You sold it to me for 1,000, I sold it back to you for 1,200.
Is it when, say for example...
Now expand on it, Abdurrahman.
So you bought it for $1,000, but then it's worth $1,000 still, but you give it to him for 1,200, so the 200 comes out of nowhere. It's not like your property.
That's a transaction. I'll give you an example. I need $500. Okay, I need $500. So, Sulaiman, Allah khalik, can you lend me $500? So, Sheikh, yani, things are a bit tough. Yani, 500 by itself, it's rough. You're going to give me 500, give me 500 bucks? I don't want to do that. So, okay, yani, what are you happy with? He goes, I've got a trick. I'll sell you, okay, listen, my phone, okay? Sell me your phone for $1,500 and I'll pay you back in 6 months. Sorry, he has a phone. He says, buy my phone for $1,500 and pay me off in 6 months. So I say, yeah, okay, no problem. He gives me his phone. I have to give him how much? When? 6 months time. Then I told him, all right, I'll sell you the phone back for $1,000. So he gives me $1,000, which I have now. And how much is he going to get back? $1,500. Okay, he's going to get I'm going to take that 1,000 and I have to give him in 6 months time. That 1,500. If it was a legitimate transaction, if it's actually legit, one day I want to sell my phone, I sell it for $1,000. In the future, it goes up in price. I'll buy it back for increased price. Normal transaction, no issue. But when we're doing that transaction with the intention, just for it to be like riba, like a normal loan from the bank. Here's $1,000, pay us back $1,500. The only reason we put the phone there is to make it look halal. Then it's haram. The only reason we put it there is to make it look halal. An example, and this happens a lot. So if Sulaiman gives me $1,000 and I agree, Sulaiman, I think after a month I'll give you $1,000 back. At the end of that month, can I from myself add on top of it as a gift to him? Yes, I can. So he gave me, we agree. Sulaiman gives Nassim $1,000 to be paid back after 30 days. So he gives me 1,000, I need to return back 1,000. But because I'm, Allahumma barik, a very, very, very nice person, I'll give him back 1,100 as a gift. Or $1,000 plus a perfume as a gift. That's allowed. Because there's no intention of riba there. He gave it to me 1,000, the agreement is, I'm going to give it back to me 1,000. And I from myself give a gift on top. That's allowed, and the Prophet ﷺ done that. What some people try and do is, alright, Sulaiman, give me 1,000 and I'll give you 1,000 back, plus I'll give you a gift. From the beginning. Is that allowed? That's not allowed. Why is not allowed? What's the difference between the first case and the second case? The first one came with a condition. From the beginning, you already agreed to pay back extra. You're not allowed to agree to pay back extra. That becomes clear riba. But you just try to play a trick and call it a gift. The agreement originally is, you give me 1,000, I'll give you 1,000 back. That's what a loan is. You give me 1,000, I'll give you 1,000 back. If I want to add something, that's from me. He can't expect that at all. But when we agree from the beginning that you give me this and I'll give you this, plus I'll gift you something. Okay, this is not allowed. This becomes riba at the end, inshallah. Riba al-fadl is another type of riba. You give me 1 kilo of silver, for example. I'll give you 2 kilos of silver, a different type of silver. This is not allowed. That which can be measured. Okay, that which can, because some people get confused as well with this. That which can be measured, if they're the same thing and they can be measured or weighed, then in terms of, that's how they're sold. Like 2 kilos, 5 kilos, etc. Like fruits, vegetables, rice, dates. That which can be measured and weighed, that's how it's sold. Then it shouldn't be, I'll give you 2 kilos of this, you give me 1 kilo of that because it's a lesser type. Like when Bilal radiallahu anhu sold 2 kilos of a lesser type of date for 1 kilo of a better type of date. That's not allowed. Okay, that which can be measured and weighed. Like silver, let's say gold. You got 28 karat gold and you got 10 karat gold, masalan. So you can't say, here, I'll give you 2 kilos of my 10 karat gold for 1 kilo of your 28 karat gold, 24 karat gold. That's not allowed, because you measure and weight. What do you have to do in that case? Go and sell your gold, then come back and buy his gold. Okay, it can't be measured or weighed. But let's say a person's got, for example, different birds. One person's got an African grey, and one guy's got a macaw, but they're similar priced. He's got eclectuses. Okay, so he says, I'll give you 5 of my eclectuses for your African grey. That's allowed, because they're not measured or weighed. Okay, they're not measured or weighed, and that's how they're sold. That which can be measured and weighed, sell it if it's going to be more, and then go back to it. Allahu alam, specific wisdom. It's a lot of times just a way of around riba, because you it's silver, gold, rice, dates. It's just a form of riba. It's just like you give me 500, I'll give you 700. If I want, in order to stay clear of it, I go sell what I have the money, then I'll go back to you and pay. Most of the time, most of the people here, like 99% of the people, they don't buy and sell things that are weighed like that. But it does happen a lot with things like gold and the like.
Just
Questions at the end, Allah yahdikum.
coins or something.
Ask me at the end, because that's a whole different subject. Nikah al-muhallil. What's nikah al-muhallil? Prophet ﷺ called him Tays al-musta'ar. You know Tays? Tays al-musta'ar. What's nikah al-muhallil?
When a woman gets divorced 3 times, and then a person marries her with the intention of divorce, just so she can go back to her husband.
Jayyid. So one guy, Allah yahdi, all he does is divorce his wife. She didn't make the coffee, he divorced. She didn't make lunch, divorced. Dinner was late, divorced. Khalas, that's 3 times. Jayyid. But he's spewing because he loves her. The guy's wrapped. I want this woman. Sheikh, Allah khalik fatwa, ma fatwa. Nah. Goes to the Ahbash, even they say la. At the end, he says, I still want this woman. Taib, Sheikh, what do I do? The Sheikh says, that's it, it's finished. if you guys ever have a chance of getting back together, she has to get remarried again, and then get married again, a proper marriage. They consummate the marriage. If they get divorced, then she can go back to you. So he says, فكرة. صاحبي أبو سامر شو رأيك؟ Go عمل كتب كتاب معه. Go do your كتب كتاب with her. No, don't do anything. But just say if anyone asks you, yeah, we done everything. And then you get divorced. And then they get to the original sheikh. What happened? Yeah, she got married, she got divorced, she done her iddah. And now we want to get back together again. طيب. In what they done, halal or haram? Haram. Why? Because the intention was for it not to be a proper marriage. It was just to be in the shape of a marriage in order for him to get back to her. Okay? So the intention was haram because you playing games and fooling is haram. If she gets married, a proper marriage doesn't work out, yeah, ahlan wa sahlan, go back to him. But to go and to set the whole thing up, this is not allowed. This is where we got to differentiate. Okay? And this is why I love fiqh, because we can branch off a lot. Let's say a sheikh, someone came to him with that case. The sheikh doesn't know anything. They come and they say, we were married, we got divorced 3 times. She went and got married, then she got divorced. She's finished her iddah. We're here, her wali is there, 2 witnesses are there. Please do our katb kitab. Do our marriage contract. And the sheikh does their marriage contract. Is there any sin on the sheikh? There's no sin on the sheikh. Is their marriage valid? Their marriage is not valid. So between him and her, they're committing haram. Okay, because they know that it's a lie between them. They know. And this is very important because a lot of people think, the sheikh done the katb kitab. If you got married and it was a lie, one of the conditions were not there, then that is haram. Your marriage is haram. Your marriage is haram. It happens, for example, let's say a girl, her dad lives next door to her. Oh, my dad died, I don't have a wali. Sheikh, my dad died, Allah yarhamu. My uncles, I don't have any uncles. SubhanAllah, my judda never had any boys. I have no male cousins from, I have no male relatives from my dad's side. I have no one at all I have is females. The sheikh, if he doesn't have anyone to ask about the girl, and he says, okay, if you don't have any wali, I can be your wali. But her dad is alive. And she gets married with the sheikh as her wali, not her dad. And she knows, then her marriage is haram. Okay, her marriage is haram. These types of things happen a lot. So again, differentiate between what the sheikh does or the imam does as that which is allowed in front of the person, and between what people do. Same thing with, let's say, the right of someone. Abdurrahman owes Bilal $10,000. Like, it's going to be the opposite. Abdurrahman's a nice guy. Bilal owes Abdurrahman $10,000. And he says, Akhi, I want my haqq. He says, brother, let's get to the sheikh. He says, all right, yeah, let's go to the sheikh. Abdurrahman comes, sheikh, he owes me $10,000. Do you have witnesses? I don't have any witnesses. I gave it to him as on good terms, we're friends. I didn't think we needed a contract. Bilal, do you owe him $10,000? No. Do you have witnesses? Yes, I've got witnesses that I don't have $10,000. Who? Adam comes, and when Ammar, Shadi, two, mashallah, the best witnesses, tabarakallah. Adam and Shadi come. Sheikh, he gave him back the money already. The judge, what's he going to do? He's going to rule and say, Abdurrahman, well, I apologize, but the $10,000, the witnesses say it's been paid. Is there anything wrong on the judge? There's nothing wrong on the judge. And that's what the Prophet used to warn the people when they come to him, and he would warn them of the hereafter, and warn them of the hellfire, and warn them of lying. Because he said, some of you are more eloquent than others. So if one of you eats the right of his brother, he's going to have to give it back in the hereafter. So what they done is haram. What they done is haram. Okay? So just because the sheikh or the judge rules for you, it doesn't mean that that ruling is allowed. If something is haram, it says haram, even if it has the look of that which is halal. الأحكام أحكام الوسائل كأحكام المقاصد. Any questions on this particular rule, brothers? تفضل شادي. It's sunnah, it's mustahab to write it down, but it's not an obligation. But it's recommended.
If I bought a car for $1,000.
Don't ask me Hanafi questions. No theoretic questions. Give me something practical.
I bought a car for $1,000. You know I bought the car for $1,000 and you need a car. And I tell you, okay, take the car for $1,400.
ما في شيء. That's just profit. That's ما في شيء. Normal profit ما في شيء. Even I didn't want to mention. I wasn't gonna mention it, but I'll mention it as an example. This happens a lot as well. It's not riba. As long as there's two people in a commodity in between, ما في شيء. Example. I want to buy a house. Sulaiman, Allah khalik. House prices median is like $1.1 million now, so I've got about $70. If you can lend me, Allah khalik, 1.1, he says, Wallah, it's very hard to lend you 1.1 million. All right, if you buy it and then sell it back to me, like, go, instead of buying it for you buy for 1.1 and I promise to buy it off you for 1.4, $1.5 million over 30 years. That's not a problem. Because there's a commodity between us and it's a profit what he's making. He's buying it for 1.1, he's reselling it to me for 1.4. There's no intention of riba there. Intention of profit, ma fi shay'in. What you done, same thing. You bought a car for 1,000, you put 400 on it and you sold it to someone else. Ma fi shay'in. Profit. No, that's fine. That's not an issue. That's not an issue. As long as it's not your commodity that you're making on the person simply for riba.
Chef, in terms of, say, for example, the microphone, to use the microphone for adhan, if we go back to the ruling, if we take the hadith to be as a reason, yani, illa, that they used to make the adhan loud, would the microphone then be recommended to be used for adhan?
Yeah, good example. Sorry. That if the reason for the adhan to be, if the adhan is meant to be loud, if using microphones and speakers helps with that, fulfilling that intention, is it recommended to use microphones? Yes. Any other questions, brothers?
Yes, the coins. So people will buy a $2 coin for $10.
That's the coins that you collect are not coins of currency anymore. They looked at. Ya Allah, see what happens when you support Melbourne? You're the only person here that gets from Melbourne. If anyone goes from Melbourne, well, astaghfirullah. You see, I knew this side, the left side. See, it's always the left side, subhanallah. You can use them, but when they're bought and sold in that manner, they're sold as commodities, not sold as currency. The intention when you buy that $2 special coin for $10, are you buying it for the value of $2 or are you buying it for something about it that makes it $10? Yeah, so you're buying for the value. Not
Just what you said before, isn't that how the Islamic banks work? They buy a house for $1 million, sell it to you for 1.5.
some of them.
Is that right?
Generally speaking, yeah. Because there's a third party there. You, the lender, and a third party that they're buying off. It's not an issue. That general rule is not an issue. What time's the Qamah for Isha? What?
Going back to that, say you know that they borrowed the money from haram to use the money to buy the house, then can you still?
In Islam, the contracts are between A and B, not between C. Okay? If someone bought a house in riba and I go rent off them or I go buy off it, what's the issue? طيب, we'll go for the next rule, page 25. al-qawaid al-rabi'a al-mashaqqat wa tajlib al-taysir. Hardship entails ease, or hardship brings about ease. MashaAllah, early today, Shabab. 25 minutes instead of 15 minutes before Isha. Tabarakallah. This is because the Sharia is built on compassion, mercy and ease due to the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Most High, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. And Allah has not laid upon you in religion any hardship. Accordingly, actions are of two kinds. One type, which is the legal responsibility, is unable to carry out, for which Allah does not burden him over, due to saying the Most High, لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Allah burdens not a soul beyond his scope. The other type covers what one is able to carry out, but is not burdened with either doing it or leaving it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine wisdom does not require it. As for whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's divine wisdom does require, then he either commands or prohibits depending on what it is. If a matter would lead to hardship and difficulty, then inevitably entails lightening and easing, either by omitting it entirely or partly. When it comes to hardship in acts of worship, there's always going to be a level of hardship that comes in the act of worship. But there's a hardship which is intended and a hardship which is not intended. We spoke about this previously. Like waking up for Fajr, there's a hardship in it. Paying your zakat, there's a hardship in it. Doing Hajj, there's a hardship in it. So that hardship, okay, is there, it's known, it's intended by the Sharia. So you have to be patient upon that hardship. The hardship that we're talking about here, the hardship that brings about ease, is when it's above and beyond that which the Sharia wanted. You're not able to do it. And if you do it, it's very hard to do. Like standing up in Salah. We gave this example previously. Standing up in Salah, there's a hardship in it, especially if the memory is a little bit longer. There's a hardship in it. That hardship, it's meant to be there and you're meant to be patient upon it. If a person, if they have like a very bad back, or if they stand up for more than 5 seconds, their back starts to really hurt. This person can sit down. But that hardship brought about ease. Okay? Waking up for Fajr, there's hardship in it. If a person, let's say they have, and I know an example like this, they have like extreme arthritis, where in the winter months, they can't get out of bed in the early morning at all. It's almost impossible for them to get out of bed in the early morning. So they have to wake up for Fajr if they can, but do they have to get out of bed and pray? No, they pray in their bed. Okay, because there's extreme hardship in it. Jayyid. This principle applies to various categories of fiqh, including acts of worship like the permission to perform tayammum when a difficulty would arise in using water to purify oneself, as detailed in the books of fiqh. We gave an example of this. Okay, the electricity is off, you can't heat up your water. Your hot water is not working, your stove's not working, none of you had a light of fire unless you're Mannawi. If at Fajr time you can't warm up your water and the water's going to be cold. If it's a little bit cold and it's not causing you harm, but it's just not nice to use at Fajr time, do you still have to make wudu? Yes. Okay. Let's say it's freezing and you put it and it hurts you and it makes you sick, and it's almost impossible to use. You're getting frostbite. Do you have to use water at Fajr? No, you can make tayammum. Okay, because there's too much hardship in it. The first one, there was a little bit of hardship. It's understandable. You can handle it. The other one is too much hardship. Another example is sitting in prayer when standing causes difficulty in both the obligatory and the optional prayers, and we gave an example of that already. Shortening the prayer during a journey and combining between two prayers, etc. Shortening the prayer on a journey, and when you go safar, okay, for you to shorten the prayers, this is optional, and it's one of the times where the Sharia has made it allowed as an option for you to shorten your prayers, even if you don't find it difficult, because the Sharia itself made the reason travel and not difficulty. But the asal is that the reason you shorten prayer because journey usually brings about difficulty. Okay, but the reason is travel, so no one says that if it's not difficult, do I need to shorten my prayers, or should I shorten my prayers, or if it's not difficult, should I still break my fast? Okay, the reason is not the difficulty, the reason is the travel itself. But generally speaking, travel brings about the hardship. That's why the general ruling is there. Examples of acts of worship which may be lightened: pardoning the attendance of Jumu'ah, Friday prayer, or the congregational prayer, Jama'ah. This happened recently, okay, where people, let's say they had very weak immune systems through COVID, they actually had a worry that if they come to Jumu'ah, where there's a higher chance because they're mingling with people, that they may be afflicted with COVID and it may affect them in a very bad manner, they asked and they were given the fatwa that they don't have to come to Jumu'ah because there was hardship in it, because of the real potential of them to get very harmed. Let's say there's very heavy rain. Can the person pray at home? Yes, the person can pray at home, okay, because there's hardship in it. By the way, hardship here, there's two types of hardship. There's a hardship which is considered a hardship amongst the normal person, like Jama'ah. So if the Imam says at Maghrib, let's say it's pouring hard at Maghrib, and the Imam says we're going to combine Maghrib with Isha, because the general person, it's hard for him to come back for Isha. A person doesn't, in that case where it's the communal, doesn't say, yeah, but Shaykh, so what if it's a bit of rain? We can still come. Stop being wussers. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get a bit wet? So what? It's not about you as an individual. In that case, it's about the ruling. Then you have what, when it comes back to you as an individual, like let's say standing and sitting in the prayer. So if you, mashallah, if you got a bad back where you can still stand up in the prayer, it doesn't affect you, and mashallah, your quality of life is not affected at all, then khalas, you stand up in the prayer. But if another person, inshallah, his pain level is 1%. So as soon as you feel, he's about to faint, he has a different ruling. It goes back to him as an individual. Advancing the payment of zakat. This is when there's a need in the ummah and you can give your zakat forward for you to do so, even though it's not an obligation yet. And the other acts of worship, transactions and marital issues and felonies. This is another topic, inshallah. And examples of actions being lightened, unrestricted, includes communal acts, which are either obligatory or sunnah, and acting on assumption when there is difficulty in asserting something with certainty. I know that most of you, when it comes to that, you didn't understand. Very simple. Write with your pens. Asbab al-taysir, the reasons of ease. Number one, an-nisyan, for you to forget. If a person forgot something, then there's ease in it. If a person was at work or he's at home and he forgot to pray dhuhr, there's ease in it. Khalas, you don't get sinned. What you do when you remember, you go and you pray. Okay, there's ease in it. Al-khata, if a person makes a mistake. If a person was like the man who was very, very, very happy, and instead of saying, "Oh Allah, I am your slave and you are my Lord," he said, "Oh Allah, you are my slave and I am your Lord." Okay, it's a mistake because of how happy he was. There's ease in it because he made a mistake. Someone just needs to rectify the mistake if he took anyone's right. Al-jahl, ignorance. If a person done something and they actually didn't know the ruling of, then there's ease in it. Let's say, for example, a revert didn't know that you can't drink water during Ramadan. Okay, the rulings ease on that person until they're taught. Al-ikrah, being forced, duress. A person put a gun to your head and said, "Eat bacon." Okay, as long as your heart hates it, then there's ease in it. If a person put a gun to your head and said, "Kill the other person or I'll kill you," what do you do? Ya Adam. Allah يهديك. Stop. Allah. This guy دغري عطل العالم. Where's your loyalty? Or shoot the guy that's that's an option. But he put a gun to your head and he put a knife, for example, so you can't kill him, and he's standing far away. Says, "Go and stab the other person to death." أشهد. الله أكبر. كلكم تريدون الشهادة. الله أكبر.
You refuse, yeah.
You refuse? By choice?
Yeah, by choice.
Do you have the choice to kill the person because you're forced?
No, you don't. No, you don't. Yeah.
Why?
Because it's, you're committing murder. Big harm. You rather die.
Very good, okay, like we said last week. You can't go from one harm to another harm. Okay, one harm which is the same or bigger, you can't do. You can only go from one harm to a lesser harm, like eating bacon is less than dying. Okay, but what gives you the right to take someone else's life in order to save your own life? That doesn't work. In war, different story, self-defense, different story. But for no reason for you to kill someone in order to save your own life, it's not allowed. Question at the end.
You don't like this one?
Question at the end. I know exactly what you're going to ask. Al-marad, sickness is another reason for there to be ease. Again, if a person's sick, legs backwards, if a person's sick and they can't fast, they don't have to fast. Okay? But again, it has to be a hardship to the level where you can't fast. If a person has a little headache and he can handle it, then khalas, he has to fast if you can handle it. But if a person has a migraine where he can't handle it, he has to break his fast, then they have that rukhsah. As-safar, travel. Travel brings about ease, like we said with the fasting and the prayer. And al-usr, general hardship. If there's something generally is too hard for a person to do, then they have ease in it. And umum al-balwa. Who's heard this term before? Umum al-balwa. It's when something becomes widespread and extremely hard for you to avoid. This can also turn the halal into the haram into halal to an extent. An example is, for example, going to the shops when there's music. Like you go to the shopping center and there's music. Okay? Can you go to any shopping center and avoid the music? You can't. So when you go, then it's halal for you to go even though there's music there. Okay? Because you need to go to the shops and there's music, you can't avoid it. It's called umum al-balwa. It's different. Let's say we lived in a society where there were shops that don't have music and they're easy for you to access, and there's shops that have music and they're easy for you to access. So both are easy for you to access. One's got music, one doesn't have music. Where would you have to go to? You'll get to the one with no music. Okay, as long as they have the same products that you need and they're both reasonably priced, you go to the one with no music. Okay, because that one is away from the haram. But because people, they say, sometimes they tell you, go to the wedding, but then you go to the shops, there's music at the shops. Okay, one you can't avoid is hardship in it, one it's by choice. Some anwa' taysir, this is anwa' taysir, ways in which the Sharia brought ease. From amongst them is al-isqat, getting rid of the ruling altogether. So if you can't afford to go to Hajj, what happens to the obligation of Hajj? It's gone. Okay, this is one type of ease that the Sharia brought. Naqs, to reduce. Okay, to reduce. Like when you're in travel, the 4 rak'at salah becomes 2 rak'at. Ibdal, swapping. Like wudu, if you can't do the wudu, then you do tayammum. Taqdeem, bringing forward. Like if you're traveling and you're going to combine dhuhr and asr, you can bring it back to, you can bring it back dhuhr time. So you can bring asr at dhuhr time. Or the opposite, ta'khir, you can delay, so you can delay dhuhr to asr time. And the last one from the types of ease which the Sharia brought is isti'amal muharram, to use the haram. Example from the companions. Give me an example from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Wearing silk. Okay, if a person has a very bad skin condition or a very bad rash, and silk is the only material that is going to ease that, then he's allowed to wear silk. Tayyib, again, applying the fatwa. How? Buying Versace shirt?
Only that section of the skin.
Only that section. Okay, only that section will get tailored. Only that section is what he does. Another example from the companions.
Wasn't there a Sahabi that had to put a gold nose?
Jayyid. Okay, he had to put gold on his nose. Okay, he was injured, and the silver caused disease around it. Okay, it caused the wound to get worse. So they removed the silver and they put gold, even though the asl is that you don't use gold for it. Jayyid. So the first rule that we went through, the ahkam of the wasail is the ahkam of the maqasid. And the second rule, al-mashaqqa tajlibu at-taysir. Just a very important point regarding al-mashaqqa tajlibu at-taysir, especially for salah. Al-maysur la yasqutu bil-ma'sur. Al-maysur la yasqutu bil-ma'sur. Especially in salah, I'm talking about. That which is easy is not dropped because of that which is hard. When you're praying your obligatory prayer, you have to do, you have to stand up, you have to do ruku, you have to do sujood, you have to do all of it. If there's something that you can't do, it doesn't mean everything is dropped. So you have people, for example, that can't do sujood. So what does he do from the beginning of prayer? He sits down. If a person sits down from the beginning of prayer because he can't do sujood, then his salah is nullified. Salah is gone. You have to, in your obligatory prayer, you stand up, you do ruku', you come up from ruku'. When you can't do sujood, what do you do then? You sit down. Okay? This is for the obligatory prayers. If a person can't stand up, but he can do ruku' and sujood, just picture it. If a person can't stand up, but he can do ruku' and sujood, then the same thing. If you can, by the way, you always, if you can stand up right at the beginning for takbiratul ihram, you do. If a person can stand up Allahu Akbar and then sit down, that's what you have to do. Okay? But let's say he stood up Allahu Akbar and then he has to sit down because he can't stand up for more than 3 seconds. So he sits down. But he can do ruku', then he has to do ruku' and he has to do sujood. Okay? So whatever is easy to do, he has to do it in the obligatory prayers. As for the sunnah prayers you can pray sitting down. Okay, from the beginning it's not a condition to stand up. But do sujood. Okay? If you're going to pray on a chair by choice and you can do sujood, you have to do sujood. Jayyid properly. Because what's allowed, what's a concession in the sunnah prayers is the sitting down and standing up, not the other actions like ruku' and sujood. هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله محمد وصحبه أجمعين.